You're listening to the Cyberwire Network, powered by N2K.
And now, a word from our sponsor, SpyCloud, the cybercrime analytics leader. SpyCloud disrupts cybercrime by telling you what criminals know about your business and your customers, so you can take action to prevent ransomware, account takeover, and online fraud. SpyCloud constantly recaptures and analyzes new data from the criminal underground, including credentials, cookies, and PII siphoned from malware-infected devices. With knowledge of the specific data criminals have in hand from InfoStealer malware on managed and unmanaged devices, security teams can respond with a more efficient and effective process called post-infection remediation. Get SpyCloud's post-infection remediation guide outlining the 7 steps for preventing a malware infection from becoming a full-blown ransomware incident. Visit spycloud.com/cyberwire. That's spycloud.com/cyberwire. And we thank SpyCloud for sponsoring our show. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the CyberWire's Research Saturday. I'm Dave Bittner, and this is our weekly conversation with researchers and analysts tracking down the threats and vulnerabilities, solving some of the hard problems of protecting ourselves in a rapidly evolving cyberspace. Thanks for joining us.
And this specific research was targeted to the Chromium browser, which is the open source version of Chrome, which is also the foundation for many of the popular browsers that are used today.
That's Ron Masas. He's a lead vulnerability researcher at Imperva. The research we're discussing today is titled Google Chrome SymStealer Vulnerability: How to Protect Your Files from Being Stolen.
And we just wanted to really map out all the ways that the browser can interact with the user file system and explore these mechanisms to better understand how they handle symbolic links.
So at the root of the issue here, as you mentioned, is this notion of symlinks, symbolic links. Can you describe to us, for folks who may not be familiar with that, what are we talking about here?
Sure. So a symbolic link is essentially a type of file that is a reference to another file or a directory. And they're usually used for bookmarks or shortcuts, but they could have very bad security consequences if they're not handled correctly.
And so how is Chrome and Chromium set up to handle them?
So usually the right way to handle them is to ignore them. And when we looked at the Chromium and Chrome browser, they usually do just that. So if you ask any developer, like, what's the ways that you can interact with the user file system? There are typically 3 ways. So there is the HTML input with the type equal file, which is the most basic way to upload files from the user. We have the drop event. So this is where the user drop a file to the screen or folder. And we have the new JavaScript API, the file system access API, which is just a new way to do it with JavaScript. And all those APIs handle symbolic links correctly. So they usually ignore them.
And so what was the issue here?
So while I was testing this and I set up my testing environment so that I have all those integration working, I accidentally dropped a file onto the file, the HTML file input. So apparently, when you drop a file onto the HTML file input, there is a completely separate code that handles this case. And this code doesn't account for symlinks, and it actually recursively resolves them.
Well, then let's walk through the implications of that. In your research here, you all lay out a possible attack scenario. Can you share that with us?
So we came up with a few attack scenarios. It's also, I think, important to note that there are other security mechanisms for when you upload files, so a large amount of files. So for example, if you try to upload a folder that contains, let's say, 100 files, the browser will typically show you a pop-up message saying, are you sure you want to upload this amount of files? So I just wanted to highlight that this find also bypasses all of those security mechanisms.
Oh, interesting.
So back to the explanation on the attack scenario itself. The way it goes is it's like this. Because we found a way to recursively resolve symbolic links, this means that if we get a user to upload to our website a folder that contains symbolic links, the symbolic links could be even inside of a hidden folders, we will be able to access any file on the operating system. So the attack scenario was, we took the example of a crypto wallet generator. So if you ever created a crypto wallet, you typically get like the seed phrase. This is used to recover your wallet in case you lost your keys. And the way we wanted to exploit this is by downloading a zip file that contained these recovery keys and ask the user to upload it back to prove that they have the recovery keys. And this sounds okay because you just downloaded these files from the internet. So what harm can be done by uploading them back, right?
Right.
But if you do that, you actually upload the symbolic links that points to your private keys, your cloud credentials, or other sensitive files.
This episode of The Cyberwire is made possible in part by Nisos, the managed intelligence company. At Nisos, they help enterprise businesses achieve better risk insights and outcomes by delivering threat intelligence as a managed service. At Nisos, you can rely on their people, process, and technology to help you control costs while improving your defenses. They help you respond to threats faster and more effectively through assessments, monitoring, and investigations. Learn more about Nisos at nisos.com/cyberwire. That's nisos.com/cyberwire. Monitor cyber threats on all your online services with the CrowdSec console. Once you've installed CrowdSec's open-source IPS, you'll get an instant overview of your threats, alerts, remediation decisions, and suspicious IP activity. Not only will you be able to identify which IP is attacking your services and through which vector, but you can also analyze past activity history to identify trends and patterns. Finally, the console also shares actionable data from the CrowdSec community-driven CTI, built from thousands of nodes, spread all over the globe and covering diverse types of systems. Get started on the CrowdSec console for free at crowdsec.net. In this scenario, would you be linking to files that you presume are on the person's system?
Yeah, and because the symbolic link is getting resolved recursively, you can just link to a different directory. So you can do like .. and actually gain access to all the files that are before the downloads folder, for example.
Wow. So you all reached out to Google about this, and they were responsive.
Yeah, so we reported the vulnerability to Google. We showed the proof of concept. We explained the issue, and they fixed it.
But it did take a couple rounds to get it completely resolved.
Yeah, after the first fix, we took a look and we noticed that in some cases, if the symbolic link is not relative, then the issue can still be exploited. So we reported it back to them and they handled that in the next version.
I think this research here really speaks to the fascinating reality that it seems to me that in this case, you were doing some work and you just sort of stumbled across this. You accidentally triggered a behavior unintentionally that led you down this path.
Yeah, definitely. It was I think that in the end, we will get to it because we were also looking at the source code and trying to figure out what are all the ways that the browser interact with the file system. But definitely just trying out the APIs help to speed this process up and find this. But yeah.
Was it surprising to you that it was a different that there was different code behind dragging and dropping something rather than the other ways to access files?
Yeah, it was really surprising, but the Chromium source code is huge, and there is so many components and different things. So it makes sense that as they add more things, the code just accumulates, and it's open up the possibility for such vulnerabilities.
So what are your recommendations here for folks to best protect themselves?
Yeah, so I think the best recommendation is keep your system up to date. But also, if we look at this case specifically, I would say be wary of websites or people asking you to do things that you wouldn't normally do. So in this example, downloading something and uploading it back, even if it sounds safe, you might be able to notice that there is something weird going on and should avoid it.
That's Ron Masas from Imperva. The research is titled Google Chrome SymStealer Vulnerability: How to Protect Your Files from Being Stolen. We'll have a link in the show notes. I want to tell you about another podcast that I enjoy that brings you smart, engaging, surprising interviews that go beyond the usual partisan bludgeoning. The show is called The Gist, and it's the longest-running news and commentary podcast out there. Host Mike Pesca puts forward arguments and asks great questions guided by curiosity and skepticism. He challenges you to think critically. You'll hear things you won't agree with right next to arguments that make you say, "You got that right." Plus, he's pretty funny, too. Recent episodes explored the Twitter files, which contained important revelations while at the same time being overhyped. He showed how the Never Kevin caucus was, yes, nihilistic, but acting in their own rational self-interest. He's interviewed Michael Imperioli and the guy who ran Steakum's Twitter account and Harvey Weinstein's prison consultant. If this sounds interesting to you, then listen to The Gist every evening, wherever you get your podcasts. The CyberWire Research Saturday podcast is a production of N2K Networks, proudly produced in Maryland out of the startup studios of Data Tribe, where they're co-building the next generation of cybersecurity teams and technologies. This episode was produced by Liz Irvin and senior producer Jennifer Iben. Our mixer is Elliot Peltzman. Our executive editor is Peter Kilpie, and I'm Dave Bittner. Thanks for listening.